I'm Mediha Sarwar, and welcome to Skin in Focus, brought to you by Locobase. In this series, we delve into the fascinating world of skin health. Each episode will focus on different aspects of skincare, featuring insights and personal stories from experts. Today, we're exploring a groundbreaking topic, the skin microbiome. If you're listening and have questions about the microbiome or want to know more about maintaining healthy skin, you're in the right place. We're starting off strong in a great way. Our guest today is Dr. Schuppe Koistinen. She is not just a scientist, she's a passionate advocate for microbiome research and a trusted expert in her field. Originally from Germany, Dr. Ina has dedicated her professional life to understanding the intricate relationship between the microbiome and health. She currently holds the position of Alliance Director and leader of the Women's Health Team at the Center for Translational Microbiome Research at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Ina.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here with you.
And we're really, really pleased to have you. So can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what got you into specializing in all things microbiome?
Yeah, that's a very good question and a long story. But the microbiome is an extremely interesting field. Just like 2 decades ago, research was mostly focused on how to kill off bacteria because we didn't have the technical possibilities to study all the microbes we have in and on our bodies. But now with these technical advances of sequencing, we can study it and we start to understand how important a healthy microbiome is for our health. And I think it's a very fascinating field, and I got the opportunity to work with that here at the Karolinska Institute. So I jumped on that because I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And we're really, really looking forward to hearing more about it. So to start with, tell us more about what is the microbiome?
So maybe we should start with another definition, and that is the microbiota. So when we talk about the microbiota, we refer to all those small one-celled organisms we have in and on our bodies. So these are bacteria, but they are also viruses, archaea, and fungi, and there are also some others. So it's this collection of microbes. And when we measure them, the best way of doing is to sequence. So we look what genomes are present in those microbes. So the collective number of genes that are present in the microbes, that is what we call the microbiome. So it's actually more a technical term because that's how we measure them.
Yeah, thank you for that. And why do they exist? Why do we have these microbes on our bodies?
There has actually never been a time in human life where we existed without microbes. So the microbes have been on the planet long before us, and we have developed in very tight synergy with them. So they are super important for our health because they help us digest our foods, they protect us from infections, they train our immune system, and they also help us to produce certain vitamins, which we are not able to produce ourselves. And they have lots of regulatory function in our body. And on the kind of counterpart, we offer them like a smorgasbord of food and living the circumstances. Yeah. So we are the hosts and we benefit from their presence, but they also benefit from us being the host.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. And they're not only just found on the skin, but from what I understand, we also have them inside our bodies.
Yeah, we have them on like in the mouth, in the gut, in the vagina, if you are a woman, and on the skin. So all kind of membranes that are in contact with our external environment, there we have microbes, and they have an important role to protect us from infections, as I already said.
Yeah, that's really, really good to know. And then that leads on to the hot topic. How can the gut microbiome affect the skin?
The gut microbiome is the most important of the microbiomes because it is the biggest in its size and weight. So we have about 1 kilo to 1.5 kilograms of bacteria in our gut. That's kind of the same amount as brain tissue. So it's like a distinct organ, actually. And it's very metabolically active. So these microbes, they produce lots of small chemicals that are distributed in our body. A stable microbiome and a balanced microbiome is absolutely necessary for our health. So the kind of gut microbiome health is the core of our health, because the gut microbiome has connections to all other organs, to the brain, to the lungs, to the skin, to muscles, to vagina, and kind of all organs of our body. So this is the essence. If there is an instability or dysbiosis, as we call it as researchers, then it affects many aspects of our health and also the skin.
Wow, that's fascinating. So are there studies that show that conditions like eczema, psoriasis, and acne are linked to a lack of exposure to gut-friendly microbes in early life?
Yes, there are actually studies that have indicated that conditions like eczema and psoriasis and acne may be linked to the lack of exposure to beneficial microbes early in life. And there are kind of two aspects that are discussed in that. One aspect is that the gut microbiome, as it develops in early childhood, is absolutely necessary to kind of establish the connection with the immune system and to train our immune system. And that has also a regulatory role for the skin. And the other aspect is what we call the hygiene hypothesis. So if young children are not exposed to the microbes we normally are exposed to, then their immune system is not trained in the correct way. And then different types of conditions can occur, like eczema, which is very common. And we think there is a direct link to the gut microbiome and the kind of lack of early exposure to beneficial microbes.
Wow.
But these studies are still in its infancy. So at this point, we don't really have understood the causal relationships, even if we think that, or we know that eczema is kind of partly induced by this badly trained immune system. The causal relationships are not 100% clear. And that's the same for psoriasis, which is kind of where we think that an imbalanced gut microbiome affects systemic inflammation and the immune function, but it's not fully proven. So there is more research needed, but I think we have enough evidence to study it more and to think that there is a reason for it.
Yeah, but so far the evidence shows that there's definitely a link between the two.
Yeah, well, we call it an association, but as I said, the causality is not really proven yet.
Sure. Thank you for that insight. So does that mean that if somebody in their early life didn't get that exposure, so as they enter into adulthood, are they doomed for the rest of their lives? Or
no, there are so many sources for microbial contact. And babies that are born with cesarean sections and not through the vaginal channel as a normal delivery, they already have like a disadvantage in their early start. But on the other hand, they get in contact with microbes from the environment, from the skin of the mother and the skin of the family. And one important fact is also that breast milk actually contains helpful bacteria. So that's the way of nature to make sure that the newborn baby is fed with the right bacteria. And breast milk can contain up to 200 or 300 different strains of bacteria. So it's really an important part of breast milk is to feed the right microbes into the baby's gut. So we think that about the first 3 years are important in establishing the microbiome in the gut. And then it's relatively stable unless you interrupt it with like antibiotica or other treatments that are really interrupters of the microbiome.
Okay. So just so I understand correctly, breast milk and the birth canal, they're the two sort of main points for babies where they're introduced to these microbiomes.
Yeah, at least for early colonization in the beginning of life, yes.
Wow, that's something I didn't know. That's really, really good to know. So thank you for that. So what should people do to ensure a healthy microbiome and healthy looking skin? So more from a lifestyle diet perspective, what would you advise?
Yeah, there are several things to think of. I mean, one is the connection with diet, as you already mentioned. And there, the advice is to have a very kind of varied diet, and especially thinking of taking enough or eating enough vegetables and fruits, because that provides us with prebiotics, or the type of fibers the microbiome feeds on, because we can't digest fibers ourselves. So when we eat them, they get transported down to the colon, and there the microbes have a big party with them. So it's super important to have a diet that is rich in vegetables and fruits, and also whole grains, which are also a very important source of fibers. So that's one part. And the other part is to eat fermented foods. In history, humankind has been eating fermented foods because we couldn't preserve foods before. We had this food industry and lots of additives and conservation methods. So fermentation has been used, and we have been eating milk products that are fermented, like yogurts and cheeses, but also different types of vegetables and even fish and meats that are fermented. These contain a large number of lactobacilli and other bacteria that produce lactic acid. So this is super important. So diet is one part. And then the other part for a healthy skin is also to be careful in the treatment of our skin, so that we don't wash away that protective layer of microbes we have on our skin. So avoiding antibacterial and antifungal products, and avoiding very strong scented products and strong soaps. So being gentle to your skin. Often it's enough with warm water and a mild soap, so you don't have to use so many products at all. Yeah, and also being careful in avoiding antibiotics if you not really need them, because they save lives, but not using antibiotics unnecessarily, I think, is one of the big things.
Yeah. So there's definitely, I've seen a trend towards the kimchi pots are always out of stock in my local supermarket. So I think there's more and more awareness as time goes on about fermented foods. And I've also heard of apple cider vinegar, sort of using that on sort of your side salads and some of the other fermented foods. Yeah, that's really, really good to hear. So what skincare products could help to preserve a healthy skin microbiome? And what are the ingredients that help the most with that?
I mean, regarding skincare products, I have thought most about what should you avoid, because then, as I said, it's easy to destroy this protective layer of the microbiome. But of course, there are also parts of or ingredients of skincare products that are important. I mean, to keep moisture, to keep the lipids in the skin. So having products with high lipid content is important, and different types of vitamins may be important. But I think the most important for the microbiome is just not to wash it away, and not using strong detergents and antimicrobial compounds that really destroy it.
Mm-hmm. So might be a naive question. So what happens if we destroy this microbiome on our skin? How would you see it in symptoms?
Yeah, the symptoms are dry and irritated skin. And then in the long run, also the development of skin conditions like eczema or acne or things like that. So it's really dry and irritated skin. I think it's the first symptom.
Yeah. So if someone's constantly disturbing that microbiome that's found on their skin, long term, it can essentially lead to those conditions we just talked about.
Yeah.
Doctor, before we wrap up, what are the biggest myths about skincare that you'd like to debunk today?
I think the biggest myth is that we have to keep bacteria away from our skin, and that we need to have antimicrobial compounds in skincare products. I think that's the biggest myth I want to highlight, because it is really, and I already have explained it, it is super important to keep the skin in its natural way. And we do it by diet, by not washing away, but also by keeping in contact with nature and having a healthy lifestyle, not smoking, and doing exercise, and having pets is also a good thing, because they also enrich our microbiome on the skin.
Yeah.
So watching out to keep your microbiome healthy, and not thinking about this kind of old-fashioned way that bacteria means infection, means disease. I mean, bacteria are also needed to protect us from disease.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such an important topic to raise awareness about, isn't it? Because people relate fungal infections and bacterial infections to sort of diseases and something not great. It's sort of like a negative connotation related to it. So listening to you today, I think I will definitely be looking after my gut and skin microbiome a bit more. So thank you so much, Dr. Ina, for sharing your expertise with us today. This has been a fantastic episode. And remember, if you're concerned about your skin, always consult a healthcare professional. And for more tips and products to help you on your skincare journey, visit us at karoacademy.com. That's KARO Academy.com, and also learn more about what we do at locobase.com. Thank you for listening to Skin in Focus, and don't forget to rate and review the show if you enjoyed it. It really helps spread the word. Stay tuned for our next and last episode, where we'll continue diving into the world of skin. See you next time. Bye.